Hey guys, wanted to talk to you about a couple items from the recent camping trip that we took to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Now, neither Lee nor I had been to the north rim of the Grand Canyon before. South rim, 100 times. North rim, never. If you've been to the Grand Canyon, chances are, statistically speaking, you've been to the south rim. The north rim is a little more of an adventure, and it's actually closed for the winter months because of the remoteness and the weather conditions that they get there. We were there late season, meaning a lot of it was technically closed, but campgrounds were open. There was one visitor center and gift shop that were open, but the lodge and a lot of the amenities all completely closed. Now, a couple things. The trip was sponsored by Energy, and we brought their Fine Energy power generator, solar generator, with us on that trip. More on that in a minute. The other thing is that I did something a little bit photographically on that trip. Lee brought a very lean kit. I brought an even leaner kit. In the member portion today, I'm going to go through that. I'm going to show you some of my own pictures. You saw a lot of Lee's pictures last week in her video. I'll link that down in the description. But I'm going to show you my pictures and a set of gear that I brought and used that is a little bit unusual to use in 2018, especially with what's available now. Now, it wasn't the Nikon D70. I've got a review of that coming up next week, sort of a vintage digital review. But members, you'll be able to go into the member video today. If you're not a member, here's some information on how to sign up.
To see Raymond's weekly show for members in its entirety, click the join button below. If you don't see a join button, there's a link in the description. Then you'll see all of the member exclusive content in the community tab.
I want to make one thing clear. I'm actually talking about a few different products today. Lee made a video last week that was sponsored by Energy where she talked a lot about the Energy Kodiak solar generator that we took great advantage of on the trip. The trip would have been possible without it, but it was a lot better, easier, and more fun for what we do with YouTube to have that with us and be able to literally just plug things in when they require a power outlet. It's beautiful when you come home from a camping trip and everything's fully charged, even the Kodiak itself. More on that in her video. I'm talking about two other products today that I camp with now, but those aren't sponsored. This video is sponsored by me, meaning these are things that Lee and I purchased to be able to make trips like this a little bit easier on us. And let me explain. I moved to Arizona in the 1990s. The first things that I did were I bought a Jeep Wrangler and I bought a North Face Cumulus tent, little small 3-person tent, just meant to really sleep in and, you know, help keep you warm and just hold a couple, 2 to 3 people and some gear. That's the way that I camped when I was younger. I drove around in my Jeep Wrangler. I'd set up my tent basically anywhere in the forest in Arizona. I'd sleep for the night. I'd get up in the morning. I'd take that tent, fold it back up, put it in my Wrangler, and I was on to the next thing. I can't camp like that anymore. I even have a couple broken ribs right now from a mountain biking accident, and sleeping on the ground just isn't my thing. I love the idea of it, but I'm soft in my old age. I promise. So let me tell you about a couple things. One of which that we already had, one of which we purchased for the trip. The thing that we purchased for the trip, and let me get the name right here, is it's super easy. It's the Amazon Basics tent. I'll put a link to it down in the description. They've got two options. There's a 4-person for about $66, and there's an 8-person for $80. I just went ahead for the 8-person tent, and let me tell you, the thing's gigantic. You can genuinely fit 8 people in there, and everybody would have a little bit of room to spare. I knew we'd have plenty of room because there were 2 of us, but we did bring a lot of gear because that's what we do. So, in fact, things that we normally would have left in the car overnight, like the solar generator, we brought into the tent at night to keep an eye on it and keep charging our gadgets. We didn't have to, when we set up camp for the night, we didn't have to take a bunch of things and put it in the car. We put the food in the car, locked up to keep the animals away. But really, everything else was right there in the tent with us. It's a large tent. The actual dimensions are in the description. It takes a little bit longer to set up than the small tent. I wouldn't want to set it up by myself. It's an 8-person tent, so chances are you've got some other people around to help you out. There was 2 of us, it was no problem. In fact, I think while I was dorking around, I think Lee basically set the whole thing up. I think I helped put some of the poles in. And the next item that I'm talking about, I set up by myself, which is, let me get the name right here, the Disco Bed XL. This is on Amazon for about $350. Now, what's a disco bed? It's a cot. But what I love about the disco bed, especially when it comes to space efficiency in a tent, is it's a double-decker cot. It's not a double-decker couch, it's a double-decker cot. So you can stack up 2 people in an 8-person tent and only really take up the floor space of a single cot. Now, we've got the XL model, so they're larger cots. Why did I get the XL? I like to roll around at night, and I wanted a good amount of room, especially for my ribs, although I had already owned this item before I broke the ribs. But I certainly looked forward to sleeping on it. In fact, the cot's very comfortable in its own right, but I added a ground pad that I use when sleeping on the ground just to have a little bit of extra cushioning in my old age. Now, you can use the disco bed models. You don't have to stack them up double-decker. I think it's cool to do that. Nothing like having a bunk bed in your tent. But you can bring 1. They don't have to be combined together. And you can bring 2, but they can both sit separately on the ground. They don't have to be stacked up. It stacks up very elegantly, and we haven't had any problems with too much movement. If you set it up right, it's very rigid and quite comfortable as well. There's a kind of a couch or futon mode you can put it in as well, where you lower one side of the upper bunk and it kind of gives you a back to kind of sit and lean on during the day. So you kind of have an interesting little sofa in your tent during the day, and then when it's time to go to bed at night, you can take that backing of the cot, set it up on the uprights, and then you've got the double-decker cot. There's extensions for it to give the lower person a little bit more room. We didn't bring the extensions. There's plenty of room for 2 regular-sized people to roll off either the top or the bottom bunk. So I almost hate to bring this stuff up because I'd love to say, hey, I just grabbed the tent and sleeping bag and I'm gone, but I'm not 20 anymore. So it was nice having those conveniences. It was nice having the Energy Kodiak. I'll put a link down there in the description below, but Lee's talked about that link in that product in her other video as well. Now, for the products that are on Amazon, we are Amazon affiliates. So even when you go to Amazon, it helps us out. If you buy those items or other items while you're on Amazon, it helps us out as well. So go check them out. If you like to be on the go, but you like, as we all get older every day, if you like a couple creature comforts when you camp now, maybe compared to when you were camping when you were younger, like me, if you want a few more comforts, those are 2 things, the 8-person larger tent and then the double-decker cot. Those are 2 things that have really made a difference for me personally. Now what I'm going to do, we're going to go over to the member video now. I'm going to tell you about the photography and the photography kit that I brought with me on that whirlwind trip to the North Rim of the Grand Canyon. So if you're a channel member, head over to that video. Everybody else, thanks. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
To see Raymond's weekly show for members in its entirety, click the join button below. If you don't see a join button, there's a link in the description. Then you'll see all of the member exclusive content in the community tab.